ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel and welcome to part 4 of episode 3 of Spells and Specialists, where we use magic and stories to teach technical topics and communicate science. And we are super excited because we have just come from Clark's channel where we built the magic system, and now I want to jump straight into the story. But first, I have to remember to introduce the people who are here with me. So, of course, I have Clark, who is my co-host of Spells and Specialists. Hi, Clark.
Hi. Yeah, so I am Clark, the magic engineer, and I obviously like to talk about magic, and that's enough out of me. So we can go over to our guests and then into the narrative shenanigans.
Yes, so our guest today is Navarre Bartz, and hopefully you will have seen parts 1 through 3, but if you have not, Navarre, would you introduce yourself again, please?
Sure. I'm Navarre. I write and have a YouTube channel, both under the name Solarpunk Station, and I have a background in material science and engineering, where I used to do battery and capacitor research and dabble in things with solar panels and all kinds of energy materials, which is why I'm here today.
Yeah, and I mean, we have learned a lot over the last 3 parts of this episode, and actually even in the parts where we were talking about the seed crystal and then the magic system, we were throwing out new knowledge. I was learning new stuff. I was making new notes the whole time. It was very cool. I knew next to nothing about any of this stuff, so I highly recommend parts 1 through 3 for you to learn it too. And this part 4 is, I mean, one of my favorite parts. I love all the parts, but this is super fun for me because this is where we take all the cool stuff that we nerded out about in part 1, the seed crystal that we came up with in part 2, the magic system that we built in part 3, and we then start talking about plot and characters and conflict, and we start thinking about a story that can communicate that, which is the whole point of why we are here. So to kick us off, I'm just going to summarize kind of the key points and the goal of the science communication that we're trying to do today, and then I will let you know how we're going to do this, because it's getting more structured every time we do this. It's going to get more structured until I figure out how to do this. So the main take-home messages that we will be focusing on are about energy and energy management, and that it's all about transformation from one type of energy to another, and that everything has inefficiencies such as heat loss, and that in order to get power and work, you have to have movement of particles between 2 opposing charges. And we took those take-home messages and we created a magic system that is based off of people and places and other organisms being able to be electrodes for a new type of wavicle that is called Farcane. And it is basically a new type of energy that we have just kind of discovered, but has always been there, and it has enabled us to have a whole range of new interactions. More detail can be found in part 3. I won't go into more detail than that. That's a teaser. Go watch it.
It also, this discovery of the new particle and form of energy also explains a lot of the old ways of magic that have existed in our religions and in our past cultures, which is the other part I really liked.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And while we brainstorm our story, we want to keep the goal in mind for science communication, which is to inform people, to educate people, to make them less hesitant, less reticent to embrace change, as we in our own reality kind of push towards renewable energies. We fear what we don't understand, and so let's make everybody understand it so we can move forward. That is the goal. That is the goal. Anything else that I should mention before we dive into the narrative shenanigans?
I think just the part we were talking about a few different times about how to actually do something with the magic, you need either 2 people or a person in another element of the environment. It's not something that a person has wholly
Yes.
Right.
unto themselves, like some of the
Exactly.
magic systems.
That's a very good point. We intentionally made it a collaborative magic system.
Actually, I do have a question about that. In my head,
Okay.
I have been assuming that that is what is necessary for a person to take advantage of it. Is that also true for the technology, or can the technology function on its own?
I
I,
think since we know,
I was thinking
since
that
there
kind of the
are two,
technology would
yeah, I
function
think
on its own.
basically you need, at least for us to make useful work out of it, we have to partner with something. But in theory, you could have two parts and still do it. So yes,
Oh,
I'm talking around it, but
okay.
like
So,
you'd have two magical electrodes and the person is introducing the intent or whatever as they
but they don't
operate
both
the
have to be people,
right.
which means we could end up with a power circuit that is between trees. Cool.
Yes.
That would be cool.
Okay,
That
I
would be
just wanted to
cool.
make sure I understood that. If I want to use magic, I am one of the electrodes and I have to identify another electrode. But if we're doing it in some kind of technological setup, those two electrodes can be anything.
Right. And maybe as a person, you can also do that and set it up through magical means, but
Okay,
you need to, there has to be some way of introducing, forming that circuit initially, but
right. Okay.
maybe the formation is a little different, whether it's
Sorry to
arcane or technological.
sorry to derail. These would have been things
No,
better asked
that's fine.
in my discussion about magic. Sorry, Lovis.
But it doesn't matter. Hopefully, people have just gone from one to the next. So this is just a continuation of the conversation we were having 10 minutes ago. So hopefully that's all fine. And maybe it tickles people's curiosity and they'll go back and check it out in case they've stumbled across this part first. So yes, now we have all of that cool stuff and we want to talk about it and we want to get people excited about it. So the structure that we are following in order to do that is as follows. Let me share screen. So the basic building blocks of the story that we're going to try and create is conflict, character, goal, stakes, and action. Conflict, what is the main point of contention in the story? Character, who is it all happening to? What is their goal? What is the resolution of the story going to look like? Stakes, what happens if they don't achieve their goal? And action, what are the steps they're going to take in order to achieve it? And my own goal for this part of the episode is that by the end of it, we will be able to craft a pitch, which looks something like this. Because of conflict, character must take action in order to goal or else stakes. And I'm hoping that this gives us a nice, concise sentence that people can use to jump off of to tell this story in lots of different ways. The same way that we condensed all of our ideas into one sentence when we formed the seed crystal in part 2. So, I would love right now to do a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of like popcorn brainstorming here, because what we're going to do, I've been taking a few notes from the previous parts of this episode. I am going to set a timer because our track record is not very good for keeping to time, so I need help. I think we should go category by category, and I would like you to just shout out images that pop into your head, kind of that come from everything that we've talked about, and I will make notes as you talk, and then after 4 minutes, I'm setting a 4-minute timer. After 4 minutes, we move on to the next category, and then we can pick and choose. It's like a pick and mix of storytelling material, and then we will create a pitch at the end. How
Awesome.
does that sound?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Doable?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, conflict is our first category, and arguably one of the most important things you need to think about when creating a story. So, from everything that we've talked about, what are some images that pop into your head that could be possible conflicts using our magic system and everything we've learned?
So
Go,
honestly,
4 minutes.
one thing that has been jumping up to me is if there was some kind of nuclear incident. Um, so because real quick, I'm trying to think in terms of conflicts that this magic and discovery can then be the solution to, because that kind of falls in line. So there's some kind of nuclear meltdown or something like that, and that is a conflict in the world that is happening.
How about you, Navarre?
I think one thing that comes to mind is, I think it was the last episode where we were talking about since anything can be an electrode, if you have something like the humongous fungus or that giant aspen tree, the really, really huge biological systems, like what if someone's trying to like take over points of high magical potential, either through force or like shady legal shenanigans, and keep them from the people, sort of thing. Like even beyond the weaponizing, just trying to exploit this new energy source for their own gain.
I like that. I like that a lot. Something that jumped out to me was when we were talking about dendrites. I always come back to the dendrites. I love the dendrites. And that when that they form between electrodes where there's overuse, and then when those dendrites form, they kind of cause the effects to go haywire, and it makes us not really know what's going on. So I think that would be very interesting. Okay, 2 minutes. What else can we come up with?
My brain is very focused on like global disasters. So I'm thinking things of like power grids are failing, like heat waves are coming through. There could have been like another kind of hurricane, or even just like refugees, where lack of power is turning into a real big problem for a lot of people.
Okay. Lack of power. And the Farcanes that we have come up with would be a really good source of new tech, or just something to power old tech?
Yeah, something to that effect. Yeah.
Okay. Navarre, anything else jump out to you?
Maybe something that there are, I guess it kind of goes back to those dendrites, but other unintended consequences, like maybe all of a sudden the number of rogue waves increase and start sinking ships or something. And
that's not right.
This is brainstorming. That's not a very fully formed thought. Just
we like brainstorming. We like it.
Yeah.
We like it very much. Something else you mentioned before was like that the Earth has like a circuit for Farcanes to travel because they're traveling along like a magical magnetic field, and that they might be way lines. Do you think that would have any, if there were
it could be instabilities in the ley lines are causing, because like Clark was talking about the induction of electric fields from like electrical wires. It might be something like that. So I was talking about ley lines, not way lines. So
way lines. Yeah, how do you spell that?
I think it's Ley.
There we go. Ley lines.
Yeah.
Time is up. Oh, oh my God, this is so stressful. Why have I done this? Okay, good. So now we're on to character. This is good. This is moving. That's good. So now we're on to character. The first one I put in here was just something that you said, and I think in part 1, Navarre, that you were an intern in a company developing military and medical applications. And I was like, that sounds like a character to me. That would be kind of trying to like research and explore and experiment with this kind of technology. So I just popped that in as an idea.
Having both of those goals for your company can definitely arrive at some conflict, I think, between those two goals.
For sure. Exactly. Okay, so 4 minutes on the clock. Throw out your ideas.
Okay, I got one. I really want a modern day Wiccan who is also like a garage inventor.
A what? Oh, a garage. Who is a garage inventor? I like it.
Yeah, I was thinking, since it is a collaborative magic system, I think this story would be interesting as sort of like a buddy cop kind of story, where you have someone who's more on the traditional magic user side, and then someone who's more like an egghead kind of person, uh, having to team
I
up
love that.
and diffuse whatever the conflict is. Um,
They together diffuse what the conflict is.
yeah, because I feel like that lets you have a more local conflict between the
Yeah.
two different views of the energy.
Yeah.
Um,
I like it very much. I like it very much. Um, okay, somebody, I mean, I'm imagining like almost like a tree hugger because part of where we started when we were talking about this is like being part of the system or being like using the system but not being part of it, and that's kind of something that comes up a lot when we talk about our place in ecology. And so I'm imagining an ecologist who's like going around going around um, trying to figure out what we could give back to the environment if we were to create like a connection between us and another electrode.
And I just want to spring off of that a little bit. These can be same person or separate person. I would like an environmental activist. Would be really fun.
Yeah, because they're trying to get people to use this technology to kind of bring the environment back from the brink that we've
Or
pushed
any
it to.
number of ways, right? They're trying to protect the forest, and they're just a big tech person. And as they see this coming out, they're like, oh hey, I can use like this is a way that I can protect the forest in a way that people will listen and be like, look, we want to leave this forest and help it grow because we can use it as a battery, folks.
Yeah. Navarre, anything else?
since we're just throwing out random ideas, someone who is this is really weird. Um, uh, an insurance adjuster for one of the big, because I remember when I read, I don't know if you read the book The Wave, it's about rogue waves, so apparently they're on my mind today. But they're talking about insurance adjusters at like the big companies that insure like cargo ships, or like if you ask them, they're like, yeah, definitely climate change is a thing and it's expensive. So like they have different motivations, but they're very much like, yes, this is a thing. So they might have an interesting perspective on how to use the energy differently than some of us might. Uh,
Yeah, very cool.
I'm not sure how to make them an interesting character, but
We can work with it. We can work with it. Okay, we've got 40 seconds. Anything else?
I kind of want like, I don't know, maybe a crotchety old witch lady.
Yeah. Old witch.
She like kind of has the hedge witch thing going on where she lives out in the middle of nowhere and has chickens and
Does
stuff.
she work at a dispensary now? Does she run
Yeah,
her own
probably.
dispensary?
Probably. She has an apothecary and dispensary
Yes.
that people visit.
I love that.
I like it. I like it. Hee hee hee. That's so funny. Okay. So now we're on to goal. And I guess the goal kind of depends on the character a little bit. But we can kind of throw out general goals and kind of across the spectrum of like morality. Morally gray characters are very popular. So we can start throwing out kind of the goal and bearing in mind the conflicts that we've kind of brainstormed here and the characters we've brainstormed. Also, the goal would give you an idea of kind of what the resolution of the story would be like. Um, and always keeping in mind our goal of making people not so scared of this technology. So probably aiming towards the positive side, maybe. But hey, we
Yeah.
need antagonists too. So
For the protagonists, I assume that, I mean, obviously you're going to want to diffuse whatever the conflict is, but probably overarching is how do we make sure that this is a safe and beneficial form of energy to continue using? Because a lot of these conflicts are either things separate or endemic to the magic system that make the world, the conflict makes the world worse. So how do we make the world better with this energy, and diffuse any pitfalls of it, I guess. Um,
Uh, another goal would just be to um, more or less solve a mystery, figure out why this problematic thing is happening.
and for the characters, we kind of need that some kind of like probably more local goal, because I feel like at least in a lot of stories, there's the call to action is usually not, most people aren't like, okay, yeah, I'll go save the world today. It's like something more personal. So like
You're not?
how is the global problem affecting their local environment? Or and maybe
Hmm.
if it is something like enclosure, like maybe the crotchety old witch lives next to the humongous fungus and it's gonna kill all their plants, and she's
Yeah,
pissed off that some company is gonna ruin her farm. uh
I really
Something
like
like
that.
that.
Um, I'm also just thinking that somebody wants to prove that their theories or their device actually works.
Mm. Because we can kind of slide, how early are we in this, like,
Yeah,
is it settled science, or
or
as much
not.
of a
Yeah.
loaded term that is, but
Yeah,
or are we still bleeding edge?
I like it. I like it. And I guess, I mean, looking at these other conflicts, like we've got these nuclear incidents and global disasters that we talked about. I mean, but that would also, the goal there might be very kind of personal. Like, how do you keep your family safe? How do you use
Hmm.
this in order to protect the people around you from some of these? Or maybe we do have a refugee. I'll add this here, a
Hmm.
refugee character. And how do these characters find safety under these kind of global disasters?
Yeah, find safety. Yeah, that's what I was thinking is just like find safety and survive.
Hmm. Which feels very timely, given all the fires and hurricanes and things going on right now. So.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, that's another thing because we talked about like dumping heat and dumping radiation into Farcanes.
Hmm.
So maybe there's like an impending disaster, like a wildfire, or there's like a nuclear meltdown, like a nuclear reactors acting weird. How do we
Hmm.
use Farcanes to like neutralize that threat?
Yeah.
Hmm. Because if it's new, there might be a, yeah, just kind of going back to that, proving something works. Like maybe somebody has a theory of something, but nobody's ever tested it yet on
Yeah.
an actual device.
Yeah.
Um,
Is
at least not at scale, because as we all know, going from the lab bench to production is
yeah.
quite the leap.
Is that 4 minutes?
That is exactly 4 minutes.
Boom. Okay.
Take a breath. Okay, so we are on to stakes. And I guess this is very much tied into our goal and our conflict.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, we can take kind of cut it in half, and we can kind of go through conflict, character, and goal, and we can choose what we like out of those. And then once we have those nailed down, then it might be easier to populate stakes and action. So let's do that. Let's go through like out of our list of conflicts, which are the ones that jump out to you, um, that would be really cool, and things that can be combined as well.
I am still really liking the nuclear meltdown.
That's
Um,
also kind of a nice foil, since people are kind of familiar with that, having done nuclear engineering, maybe more or less accurately. But I think that's a conflict people have a picture of in their head, of an energy source that was new and seemed very promising, and there were maybe more consequences than we initially realized to that. Um, so I think it's something that has kind of a nice parallel to we discover a new energy source, and is it going to be more pluses or more minuses
Hmm.
for our current situation?
And
Um,
I do think it couples very well with like power grids failing, because if you were in an area that was powered by nuclear and then the plant goes down, that also means that a lot of people's power might just go down.
mhm. And depending on availability of, like most hospitals have backup generators, but there's only a certain amount of, uh, I mean, most of them are still diesel generators, so there's only a certain amount of fuel for those. So if
Yeah, yeah,
there are more, if if your roads start failing and things, so and I mean to to well, it's not really headlines because it's 10 years ago now, but if you have some disaster, like some other disaster causing the issue with the nuclear plant, kind of like what the tsunami in Fukushima happened, um, you can kind of, like Lovis said, combine things. Um,
yeah,
and since we want to make our characters suffer, to make an interesting story, um, kind of piling on um, reasonable things that might happen, but not fun things. Um,
So are you thinking like something like up here, like there were some unintended consequences somewhere that caused this kind of domino effect that would lead eventually to a nuclear incident or meltdown?
it would probably be better if, yeah, it'd probably be better if the Farcanes are both the problem and the solution if you extrapolate far enough both directions. Um,
I feel
that there was, because I think otherwise it's just like, okay, and we saved the day with this, the end. I feel like there needs to be at least some cost to the magic, and maybe it's okay, we didn't know this would happen, we won't do that again, is the moral of the story at the end. But uh, we can still use the energy if we don't do this thing. But
Could it be linked to these like dendrites, like something that we didn't understand about the way we use the magic, and then that was a
yeah,
eventual
yeah,
thing that happened?
yeah. So mhm,
yeah, that could be good. I feel like the unintended consequences is something that would be hard to cover in a single book because we are introducing an entirely new
yeah,
complicated topic that you then have to have enough of a grasp of before you can understand how that could be then causing consequences.
fair enough.
Um, if you were doing
That
multiple
that might
books,
overcomplicate it.
that would be like great for book two or book three. That's just my
Hmm.
instinct, though.
Yeah, so maybe we're still just trying to figure out how we can use this to solve a problem we couldn't solve before.
Yeah,
Okay, that seems, yeah, that might be better. Yeah, we'll
So
we'll save it for later in the trilogy.
exactly. These are all possible conflicts for future books that anybody can use. Okay, so if we're kind of saying, okay, there was something something like a dendrite formed between whichever electrodes we were using somewhere, I guess, in a nuclear reactor kind of situation that caused or that will eventually cause a nuclear meltdown and eventual all the power grids failing, and the risk is quite high because you then have your lack of power in hospitals and in neighborhoods. You might have refugees from the nuclear fallout, etc. Navarre, you wanted to correct something.
Yeah, so again, I've done a few. I'm not a nuclear engineer, but take that as you will. But having some little bit of nuclear engineering classes and things, one of the things that annoys me about TV shows and things when there is a nuclear incident is that uh, U.S. reactors, like what happened at 3 Mile Island, there's a pretty low risk of uh, anything getting out, unlike Chernobyl, because of differences in plant designs. So meltdown is bad, and you could have a power grid failure from that, but you probably wouldn't have nuclear material getting out if it's in the U.S. I think there were other. I don't know if there are any other reactors still in use that used the Chernobyl type design, but the Soviet reactors didn't have the same amount of uh, for a silly term, double bagging of the reactor so that if it does melt down, the stuff doesn't get out. So that's one thing that just kind of, I always end up like yelling at the TV over. But
okay, well, we don't want that. We don't want you yelling at the story you helped create.
But I mean, there's still lots of other things that you could definitely have the power grids failing through any natural disaster, and it could shut down the nuclear plant. The meltdown probably wouldn't result in a leak of radioactive material. It could. I'm not saying it's not possible, but usually without getting into it, it's unlikely. In the United States, other reactor designs are different.
Right. You're unlikely to be bombarded with radiation just due to a meltdown.
Yeah, because even when 3 Mile Island melted down, I think there might have been a little bit inside the plant, but outside of the plant, there was, from what I remember, never anything released, and that was because we shut down safety systems because it seemed like a good idea at the time. So don't do that. But there's that. I mean, if we still wanted to, we could have a nuclear plant shut down and lose power, and it's not going to be able to. Once it does melt down, it's shot. Like you can't use it again. So maybe you want to bring in the Farcanes to fix that somehow and still recapture that energy somehow. Maybe.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of reduces the stakes of the nuclear meltdown a little bit as a conflict.
I mean, maybe. Large scale grid failure is a really big problem.
Yeah, so I think it could be an element of a larger natural disaster where this caused something to happen at the plant. So the plant's down. If you're somewhere where that's a lot of the electricity, here in the United States, we're like 20% nuclear. Obviously, that changes a lot depending on where you are. But if you're in a region where a lot of the power is coming from a single nuclear reactor plant, then that could take down a lot of your power, which from what we saw in Texas last year
is a problem,
especially if it's like an extreme weather event at the same time. Then...
so can we try and narrow down the character? Because I know the goal here is we want to like be able to get through our narrative shenanigans faster. So can we try and narrow down the character? And I think that will help all three of us.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Let's go down the possible characters. I really quite like this buddy cop duo because I have a feeling that would be quite funny, quite funny to read and quite funny to write. I don't know how they would do in a nuclear reactor, but that could be quite a hilarity waiting to happen.
I'm almost picturing it would be fun to put the crotchety old witch and the intern opposite each other. And the company that the intern works for also, because you have like all these conglomerates, like they also own the nuclear plant or whatever. So that's why he finds out that this is happening or something. I don't know.
What if the crotchety old witch is the insurance adjuster?
That's her day job.
Who is coming to check out this facility that has shut down, and they pair her with the intern. They're like, this intern will show you around and get you all the information you need to know, and then they take the intern aside and be like, don't give her information, and then off they go. And then together they like, I don't know. I think that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like it.
And not at all the direction my brain was
on it because he
initially
doesn't actually know anything.
Yeah.
Because
he's an intern. He has like a surface level understanding, and then he has to like go and investigate in areas where only he can get into, but he's actually not supposed to be.
Right.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's really funny.
Yeah.
And we've got the crotchety old witch,
and the insurance
who is the insurance adjuster.
Yeah, I like that. I had another thought, but I like this one better. So
I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, so and having that in mind, their goal, because obviously she's gonna get the intern onto on her side, I guess, if he's gonna start ferreting out information. Um, what would be their goal? Um,
It,
I guess solve a
I,
mystery. What the heck is going on?
right.
I think solve the mystery, and then also if there are these widespread power failures, like there's a human a significant human health impact
Yeah.
too. So yeah,
Yeah.
find that yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we're here,
Yeah, so solving the
human
mystery
health
and then also
Yeah.
impact.
trying to get the grid back up and running.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Um,
Because maybe it wasn't a full like meltdown, but
but yeah, maybe they just had to shut down the reactor because of instability or something.
right, like maybe it's far enough along that they were implementing this new technology to, like we talked about before, deal with some of the heat management issue of a nuclear power plant, and all of a sudden it started ramping up in temperature, and they had to shut the whole thing down, and they can't figure out why it's not working anymore. They're like, we
Hmm.
had our heat management in place and it's not working, and they're trying to claim and something could have broken, and it doesn't have to be the whole plant, right? But part of it
Hmm.
could be broken, and that's why the witch comes in, is to do insurance analysis of this specific piece that got broken pretty bad. So then, like, it's trying to get the plant online, it's trying to figure out why their standard heat management process isn't working anymore. And I liked the idea of somebody having a relative in the hospital.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, maybe the intern has a grandmother or something in the hospital.
yeah, that would give them really good motive.
That
Because,
would give
yeah,
him motive.
they have
And I
backup
can
energy,
imagine that
but
this crotchety old witch, that it has like some of this more traditional type of using the magic. Maybe she understands something about these arcanes that all these like schmancy scientists in the plant don't understand.
yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
And so so actually you do have like the sciencey study and the traditional study kind of like finding a coexistence in solving this mystery.
Yeah,
Yes.
which I think is how I feel like Buddy Cop does it best when they're like, oh, actually,
Yep.
Yeah,
we have this conflict, but actually, if we collaborate instead of
yeah,
butt heads over it, then
By our powers
exactly.
combined.
exactly.
So our buddy cop duo is an intern and a crotchety old witch. I love that.
I love it.
That's so funny.
And this has kind of built up a lot of the stakes already for us, right?
Yeah, it's kind of decided the stakes, hasn't it?
Yeah. Because,
Hmm.
like, relatives' life is potentially on the line if they don't necessarily need to be on life support, but it's something where power to the hospital is very important. You have like the city as a whole, where getting that power online is a really big deal. There's also kind of the thing, depending on the findings of the insurance adjuster, that might ruin the company and cause other, who knows what to actually happen to that plant. I don't know how ownership of those plants work. I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure it's complicated, but
Yeah.
uh,
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't necessarily be a catastrophic thing, but there's enough stakes, like,
hmm.
for the company and the
There,
intern, that depending on the adjuster's findings could be a problem for a lot of people. Like, it might lead to the intern and a bunch of people losing their jobs or something like that.
Exactly.
yeah, and also that gives you some motivation for not just people versus the environment, but also other people from the company maybe putting up obstacles,
Hmm.
especially depending on what went wrong. Like, was it something that someone knew
Right. Right.
was likely to fail, but they're like, meh, I don't
Right.
care. Or was it like totally an accident?
Right.
Um,
Right. Or if the blame starts being pointed towards this Farcane heatsink, and people really don't want the blame to fall there because this is one of the first places it's been implemented. It's like proving the technology and all of that kind of stuff. That can't be the cause of the problem. We have to find another cause of the problem.
because they don't want it to be the 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl of
Yeah, of Farcane
Of the
the
new
usage.
yeah.
technology.
Yeah, which I like that, because then that's less like, there's definitely a financial base to that, where there's going to be companies that don't want that because they're building off that platform, but there is also kind of that aspect of, we don't want this to be a stain on the mark of this technology because we really think this technology can change everything.
Yeah, because that also gives you more opportunities for I guess like you said, narrative shenanigans. But that gives you lots of if we are kind of taking more of a mystery approach, like if it was sabotaged or was it an accident? Like, did someone from one of the existing technology um, types that isn't invested in Farcanes, are they trying to make the technology look bad so people will continue to rely on them?
So I know we don't necessarily need this for the pitch, um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to toss this out and see what you guys thought. Is if part of the reason the Farcane heatsink is failing is because of these magical dendrites that have built up. So they have the system in place, but they have been just pushing so much energy through it. These dendrites have built up and it's no longer functioning. And then the witch can see some of that based from her own thing. If she's like, no, when you're doing magic, like just because you find something that powers a spell well, you don't just keep using that thing forever or you're gonna burn it out. Like it's gonna stop working. And that might be her thing, is she eventually gets in and looks at it and it's like, oh yeah, this is overuse. You just need to like switch up you just need to switch
You
up
idiots.
the pairing.
And then because she's a crotchety old witch, she just kind of like berates them and just like, what do you think you're doing?
Not necessarily, because at that point she has, through character growth, found a way to be more amenable to people, and all that kind of stuff. But I do think
character arcs, we like it.
Like that's a nice thing about technology. This could be a factor of scale. Is everything they've done has been a smaller scale, and things haven't been running long enough for dendrites to build up. But with the sheer amount of power that they were transforming in the nuclear plant, that led to a buildup of these dendrites much, much faster. So that's where there's the wisdom of the old magic that hasn't yet made it into the technology yet because it hasn't been necessary yet.
Yeah. Cool. I like it. I like it. So we've got our stakes to I mean, there can be many stakes. It doesn't have to be just a couple. So all of these could be true.
What's the big one we would want to put in the pitch, though?
I
Um,
think I think just I think keeping it kind of, I'm not sure how you'd work in both the relative and the large scale, but I think the relative life on the line is like how you get them into the story, but I feel like for a really short one sentence thing is probably like citywide power failure causing death and destruction and sadness.
yeah.
Yeah, I think both of those.
But
Cool.
Um,
And the action, I guess, is
get the plant
that
back
they
online, basically.
yeah,
trying
to get the plant back
investigate,
online.
Yeah.
because I feel like you have to investigate to do the, like that's the, I don't know which direction I am on the screen. So one of these is first and one of these is second, but investigate is first.
And
Yeah, so investigate in order
to get the plant back online. Yeah.
to get the plant back online.
yeah. And I personally, I think the intern would be the more interesting character in the pitch, right? Should just be like intern who has been working at this plant for 6 months. Like ends up finding themselves in a place where they have to both manage this, they have to babysit this insurance adjuster and end up being the one who has to uncover some important information about why the plant is offline to restore power to the city and keep their spouse, their child, their family member in the hospital alive before the backup generators go down.
Yeah, that's basically the pitch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
like it.
that's basically the pitch. So
Yeah.
let's write that. Let's write that in here. So intern who has been working for 6 months. What was it? Finds himself.
Finds them. I said finds themselves babysitting an insurance adjuster. Or I mean, to keep it really concise, I would just say like they must or they have to, because let's see, 1, 2,
Has to
7.
has to uncover cause behind nuclear
Plant shutdown.
plant shutdown while babysitting a crotchety insurance adjuster, in order to get the plant back online and save their relative in the hospital
On life support.
while on life support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess yeah, no, I really like that. My brain is already, yeah, thumbs up.
It's off,
Good.
is it? You're creating. So I guess with this pitch, the main test about whether this works or not is really down to you, Navarre. Do you think the story that we have created here would be an effective way of communicating all of your take-home messages that you laid out, as well as achieving the goal of like making people not so scared of new technology?
I think so, because I think the intern kind of lets us have sort of that Watson outsider character, because they know a little bit, but they have to go during the course of the investigation. They have to be like, well, why is this like this? Because I don't know how this stuff actually works. So we can hopefully work in some information without getting info dumpy, and just kind of sprinkle tidbits in there.
Yeah.
And then also we have opportunities to show that nothing is all good or all bad.
Right.
That there are positives and minuses to everything, and as long as you go in knowing what those are and try to mitigate the negatives as much as possible, then you can end up better off than sort of the devil
Yeah.
problem that you have from before.
I think the other thing that this conflict shows is the fact that like this new technology worked. There's just more we need to understand about it. So it's not a catastrophic failure thing that just isn't going to work. It's more like, oh, no, we just ran into a problem due to lack of understanding, which means we need to research it and understand it more, because like that's what happens with, I feel like that's what happened a lot with renewable, is there would be like a problem or it wouldn't work quite as expected and people would just write it off rather than being like, oh, the solution is there, we just need to find it.
Yeah, the energy crisis in the 70s was a lot like that, because they're like, oh, well, solar is cool, but it doesn't work very well. And then as soon as oil prices went back down, they're like, okay, never mind.
Right.
Yeah.
This is fine.
This is
Everything's
fine.
solved. This won't come up as a problem again in a couple decades.
Solved once and for all.
Okay, perfect. Well, if we're all happy, are we all happy?
I like that.
Yeah.
Then our pitch is intern who has been working for 6 months has to uncover the cause behind nuclear plant shutdown while babysitting a crotchety insurance adjuster in order to get the plant back online and save their relative in the hospital on life support.
And the reason that pitch is good is because it creates lots and lots of questions, including like, why is it on the intern to figure this out?
Yeah. Why is it on the intern?
Yeah.
And whose side is this the insurance adjustment person on? And
yeah,
what caused the reactor failure? And lots of options.
Yeah.
Okay, well, brilliant. Well, that is our pitch. So we have created a pitch. We have brainstormed a story in order to effectively communicate a very technical topic, I would say. That was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
enjoyed that very, very much. Thank you so very much, Navarre, for joining us on this episode of Spells and Specialists. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, where they can find out more about your work and what you do?
Sounds good. Thanks again for having me. Again, I'm Navarre. You can find, if you want to stay on YouTube, I'm on Solarpunk Station here. I also have a blog that's Solarpunk Station, which has much more content because I've been doing the blog a lot longer. And I was also recently published in an anthology. It is nonfiction called Almanac for the Anthropocene, and it is out already. So if you want to pick that up, I'm sure there will be a link in the description below. And there are
Absolutely.
other really smart people in there who are smarter than me. So.
And of course, we wouldn't want you to leave without going and subscribing to Clark's channel, The Magic Engineer, which hopefully you have been on to watch parts 1 through 3, because otherwise a lot of this will not have made much sense to you. 1 through 3 is required reading before this. So yeah, Clark, what's new over on your channel that they can check out?
I mean, that's the main thing. It's a lot of spells and specialists lately. I am trying to continue to put out content just on magic systems between those. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed those. Join me over there, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to Ecofictology while you are here. So just do it.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay, well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you both. And thank you all for watching. And that's all from us. So we will see you next week.